This episode is brought to you by the American Homebrewers Association, a community of more than 40,000 fermentation aficionados. Join the association or renew your membership by January 4th and choose a free brewing book to add to your library. Details at homebrewersassociation.org. That's homebrewersassociation.org. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, December 10th, 2020. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Matt Giovanisci from brewcabin.com joins us to talk about his experience building the perfect space for his home brewery. Or nearly perfect. If you go to basicbrewing.com, you can find archives of our audio and video shows. And if you go to basicbrewingshop.com, you can find our DVDs and our brewers' logbooks, which make perfect Christmas gifts. Hey, Santa, perfect Christmas gifts. If you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Basic Brewing and find our show page on Facebook as well. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing. And thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. And I'm planning to release a special cooking bonus video for all financial supporters before the end of the year. Financial supporters have already seen the early release of our video episode featuring the apple wine from Steve Wilkes of stevesbrewshop.com. Steve boosted up an ordinary cider with sugar to produce a delicious high-octane apple beverage perfect for the holiday season, and he walks us through all the steps in how he did that, and the general public should see that on Friday. Yesterday, I brewed a stepped-up version of one of our malt sampler beers. If you'll recall from the dark malt episode of the malt sampler, I really loved the beer brewed with midnight wheat. So I made a 2-gallon batch, or 7.5 liters, with 6 pounds, or 2.7 kilograms of Maris Otter, and 8 ounces, or 226 grams of midnight wheat. I bittered with an ounce or 28 grams of UK Fuggles at the beginning of a 60-minute boil. And I fermented with Darkness from Imperial. And I tell you, the wort tasted great. Very chocolatey with some mild coffee notes. And the house, it smelled like chocolate cake. And it was really good. I'm planning to toast up some sweetened shredded coconut and add that in the secondary. And I don't know, in my mind, I'm thinking it should make some sort of a German chocolate beer. I'm really excited about that. I was inspired to do this when I made a coconut cream pie for Thanksgiving, and toasted some coconut in a pan to sprinkle on the top of that pie. And the smell of that toasted coconut, it's pretty amazing. Let's take a quick look into the mailbag. Jacob writes, planning on harvesting the yeast off my next batch using Imperial's Loki. I've harvested yeast before with success, but I was hoping to add Whirlfloc or fine with gelatin this time around. Do you think it's safe to harvest and wash yeast that's been exposed to these additives? Or play it safe and leave the finings out if I plan to harvest yeast? Well, I forwarded Jacob's email to Casey from our friends and sponsors Imperial Organic Yeast, the producer of Loki, which is a traditional Norwegian Kveik strain, by the way. Casey said, typically we suggest that you harvest yeast prior to adding finings. There's not a ton of hard evidence out there as to why, Casey says, just that you want to keep your slurry as pure as possible, and introducing finings that cause the yeast to clump together and then repitching that could potentially cause some problems. Casey says, in the case of Whirlfloc, I know a lot of home brewers that harvest and repitch off batches that have Whirlfloc in them. I wouldn't worry about Whirlfloc too much. And then Jacob responded, thanks so much for taking the time to reply. I really appreciate it. Sounds like Whirlfloc will be the route I take to keep things simple. Love your products. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate Jacob's email, and I appreciate Casey, as usual, for answering that question. So there you go. If you're planning on using something like gelatin to fine your beer, harvest the yeast first. But if you do like I do and use Whirlfloc in the boil, not such a worry. So again, appreciate Casey from Imperial for taking time to answer Jacob's question. That's just a small sample of the top-notch customer service and technical support that you get from Imperial Organic Yeast. You know that we love Imperial. My stir plate is dusty because I don't use it anymore to make starters for moderate gravity 5-gallon batches. With an industry-leading pitch rate of 200 billion cells per easy-to-open package, in my experience, if I pitch in the afternoon, my airlock is bubbling before bedtime. It's the way it was with my midnight wheat beer yesterday, and beer's super happy this morning. Ask your local homebrew store about Imperial Organic Yeast and check them out at imperialyeast.com. Many thanks to everybody who sent in brewing disaster stories this year. We've got a ton of them. And homebrewer Scott Housel from Florida sent us a mystery homebrew challenge to sample while I'm reading the letters, including a sealed envelope with the answers that I'm assuming was kept in a mayonnaise jar on Funkin' Wagnall's porch since noon today. That show will be the last one posted in this year of 2020, which in itself is a disaster upon a disaster. Hey, you know what's not disastrous? Brewing with a Warthog electric system from our friends and sponsors Desiree and Dave from High Gravity in Tulsa. And during this holiday season, you can take advantage of a sale on gift certificates on highgravitybrew.com. That's right. Tell Santa that highgravitybrew.com gift certificates are 10% off during the holidays. You can use a High Gravity gift certificate toward upgrading your brewing system into a wonderful Warthog electric system like I have, or electric systems from other manufacturers too. Or you can use it with the Build Your Own Beer page to design a delicious beer to ring in the new year. And if you want to leave the recipe formulation to Desiree and Dave, they have great beer and wine kits all ready to go. Many, if not all, have been tested at Pippin's Taproom there in Tulsa. Take the pain out of propane now with 10% off gift certificates at family-owned and operated highgravitybrew.com. It's highgravitybrew.com. Okay, I have to start by saying that I'm jealous of Matt Giovanisci. Like many of you out there, he has his own space dedicated to the hobby of brewing and sharing his homebrew with friends. But how do you go from a blank canvas of an empty spare garage to a space designed to accommodate making beer? Well, Matt takes us through it. Matt Giovanisci, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thanks for having me.
Now, first of all, we have to say that the topic today may be a little sensitive because nowadays with the virus and all things with economy and all that stuff, what we're going to talk about, this is a luxury.
Yeah.
And people should keep in mind that we know that, and trying to be as sensitive as possible. But this is a project that you've been saving up for a long time, and you are building, or you have built, a space to house the perfect home brewery there at your house.
Yeah. Yes, I did.
Well, how did it start? I mean, you moved. First of all, I guess you had to pick out a house that had a perfect space that was available.
Yeah, we were living in the city, and I was doing brewing, and we had a little knockout cove, and I would have to pull every piece of equipment out of the garage and set it up, and that was fine. I was able to make beer and have that luxury. And for years, I've always wanted a dedicated indoor space where I could control all the different variables. And, I've watched a lot of YouTube videos where people had these dedicated spaces, and I was always, jealous of that in a nice way, in a good way, and sort of worked to find a house. And that was definitely a part of the criteria. It's like, hey, we wanted a yard and we wanted a space for a brewery. And if I didn't have the dedicated space for a brewery, as long as there was a yard, I could probably build some sort of shed or something and put it there. And so that was that was really the only criteria was, is there a room for a brew space and a room, if I didn't have one already, I could put one in the yard.
Now, what kind of a brewer are you? I mean, what are your demands? What are your needs?
Well, that's a good question. I think so I like brewing the same beer over and over and over again. I like perfecting a single recipe, and it'll never be perfect, but I like taking a crack at it and then changing one variable at a time. And so, unfortunately, when I was brewing outside for practically my entire brewing existence, I never had a full control of every variable. So, I would brew in the middle of the winter, it'd be, -2 degrees out, and I would be brewing, or it'd be the summer and be hot. And so I was on propane, and I would, run out of propane tanks and had to run to the store. And, I did extract for a long time. Then I moved to all grain and kind of stepped up slowly over the years. And I just knew, I guess, from being I'm not a man. I don't want to say like I'm scientific in any way. I didn't go to college or anything, but I do. I'm in the pool industry, and I do like the science and the chemistry of it. So I think, as just a nerd in general, I like the idea of being able to control every variable, and I wasn't going to be able to successfully do that until I was able to do it indoors in a temperature-controlled space, which, it's overkill. It's certainly overkill, but that's kind of what I wanted, and that's, what I did.
And we're not going to talk about your system. We're just going to talk about the environment in which you brew. We're not going to get into the specifics of your brewing system, because we've kind of covered that in different ways on the show over the years. But you decided to go electric.
Yeah, that was when you went electric, I'm like, okay, I got to go electric. And then I watched Brian at Short Circuited Brewers, and I'm just like, oh, I want to be electric so bad, because I try to be environmentally conscious, and, going through propane tanks I'm actually afraid of propane tanks. I've watched enough videos of garages exploding because of a propane tank that someone left in there and didn't take care of. And I don't know why. Every time I lit the burner, I was always I was nervous. Is that weird?
No, I think you're sensible.
Okay.
I mean, years ago, I did an interview with a representative from the propane and propane accessories industry, and he was explicit. Don't use propane inside. It's not. These things aren't, unless you have, or don't use a propane tank inside. There are burners and things like that are designed to use propane inside, but your standard Cajun cooker or whatever is not one of those, and
right.
They're not going to burn as cleanly. So by going electric, you solved a bunch of problems. You're not going to have to run like natural gas lines. You're not going to have to worry about bringing propane in. So by eliminating or going to electric and eliminating propane, you kind of solved some issues for you right there.
Right, and yeah, you're not wasting all that heat that's going around the kettle. You're not having to buy propane tanks all the time, or waste natural gas. You have better control over your temperature, and you can do step mashes, which is nice. You can do that with propane too. I just always found it a lot harder to do. Instead of just hitting a button and going, okay, that's the temperature. And that was the other thing too, is keeping the temperature. Brewing outside with I'd constantly have to relight it or control, and just basically stand there and kind of manage the fire, which is great. I understand. I see the appeal of that. But electric allowed me to just be more dialed in with my temperatures.
So talk about the space that you wanted to move into. It was basically kind of a box attached to your house.
Yeah. It was we had a garage, and then there was another garage. And what's weird about that is, to get to the other garage, you had to go through the first garage, and it meant that whoever owned the house before us, there was many owners, but one of them decided to add another garage on top of a garage, next to another garage. And as soon as we saw it, as soon as I opened the door, and I'm like, this is the perfect space for a brewery. It's a rectangle, and it's got good high ceilings, and it was completely empty. It was just studs and a concrete floor. And a garage door, obviously. That was it. When I saw that, I was like, great. This is a perfect spot. Although the only problem being that we had to go through the first garage to get to it, which is fine. but it wasn't ideal, and so it also happens to have a rooftop deck on it. Somebody put a deck on there, although it doesn't drain very well, so it's definitely an afterthought. And I was like, okay, I think this would be great if I could put a brewery in here and then be able to walk out of the brewery and then go up to the rooftop deck to enjoy beers. And so I decided that I would throw a door in there because I needed another entrance besides going through a garage or the garage door itself.
So that was the first modification that you had to do. And for those who want to follow along, kind of, if you go to brewcabin.com, you can see Matt's blog. And you've also put a video on your YouTube channel, the Brew Cabin YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, it's the first video of many, hopefully, that I plan to put up. And it was kind of setting the stage for the kind of content that I want to create around brewing. And it's kind of silly. It's got some silliness to it, but it's
it's well done.
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah, thank you. It's good. I basically filmed. So it was funny. I wasn't planning on doing it, but as I was starting the process of just planning it, which I did with my dad, because he designs kitchens and bathrooms and other interior aspects of homes, and so him and I worked together on the designs. My friend said, you should document this, even if it's just for yourself. I mean, you're doing a pretty big house project. It's probably worth documenting. And I was using my camera and my iPhone and my GoPro to just kind of like get the stuff on tape, not necessarily knowing what I was going to do at the end. But I just had it. And so, yeah. But yeah, the first thing was the door.
So it's, first of all, it's cheating to have your father being a kitchen designer. But
yeah.
But so let's talk about electricity. I mean,
okay.
This is a space that I assume the only electricity going in there was like for a light and maybe a garage door opener, right?
That's it. Exactly that. Yes.
And so you've got to plan for what?
Oh, that was yeah. I had to plan for the actual brewing equipment. So I had to put 220 volts in there. And at least have something for that I could plug in somewhere for whatever equipment I decided to use. I had to think about all the outlets that I needed on the floor. So I was like, well, I have a kegerator. I'm going to put that in there. I have a fridge. I'm going to put that in there. Okay, I have fermenters that require electricity. I have a sink, which the sink was really the hardest part, but it actually requires electricity, which I'll explain. And then I figured, well, I'll have to have a preparation station, just to do yeast starters or hot packaging or whatever. And so I'm going to need an outlet there. And I had to think of that. And then I had to think of the hood, because if you're going to be doing anything indoors, I had to do research to find out how am I going to get the steam out. And so that's got to have electricity. And then I had to figure out, and then I needed the whole space to be temperature controlled, climate controlled. And I didn't have, in the beginning, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what my options were. I had to research all of this. And so I had to figure out the electricity for that. So before I even hired an electrician, and I had an electrician who did my original setup in my old place, which was really clever because I didn't own the space. So I had to install temporary electricity just to brew. And something that wouldn't damage or put holes anywhere, and it had to be outside too. So we came up with a pretty clever system that I was able to take with me and hire the same electrician, but of course I wasn't able to use any of that stuff, so that was donated. But yeah, there was a lot of considerations for the electricity before even having them come over. I actually, once I did the designs and kind of understood my options for everything, and those options, obviously the hood, which I got from theelectricbrewery.com. There was he talked about using a condensate hood instead of just like a regular hood you would get for your kitchen, which traps grease. This would be a hood that you use to trap steam for a dishwasher in a restaurant. Oh. And all it is it's really simple technology. It's a rectangle of stainless steel with a little lip and a hole for where you would create the suction. And so that was something I had to special order from Canada. And then I had to figure out how to hang it, but that was a whole nother thing. But then I had to figure out the fan, how to pull the actual moisture out of the air. And thankfully, there are other brewers and people who've done this prior to me, and so I was able to just lean on them and see what they used. And I needed an outlet on the ceiling to be able to accomplish that. So then I had to, again, knowing that, and I also had to figure out the climate control thing, which my dad thankfully knew about something called a mini split or a heat pump, something that they use in Florida a lot. And I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know this existed, but it was a really cost-effective and energy-efficient system that required its own electricity. And then there was obviously code things because I put a door in, which means you have to put a light next to the door. So all these added things, and then obviously lights and things like that. Yeah.
And you're in Colorado, which will enter into the discussion when we talk about your plumbing. But I in my kitchen, I have an outlet by the doggy door, and so I have enough cable where I can move my setup into the kitchen, or I can move it outside on the patio, or I can take it into the garage. I soon discovered that depending on the weather, the boil on a 240 volt system gets so vigorous that for like an hour-long boil, I created my own weather system in my house.
Yeah, right.
All the windows steamed up, and the ceiling was about to start raining. And so having adequate ventilation is highly recommended. But we don't have that in our kitchen. So that's an interesting. So the steam hood is a good thing to look out for.
Yeah, and there was considerations on the size of it too. I think I overdid it. Like, it was just really big, and honestly, it was something that kept me up at night because I had ordered this thing. I was like, I have to get this right because it's being like manufactured, and then it's getting shipped to my house. And if it's not the right size, or I didn't put the hole in the right place, or what, if I didn't think everything through, then I would have had this unusable thing I would have had to sell on Craigslist or something. And I'm like, who's going to need this? A restaurant. I mean, that's tough nowadays. But that and the sink are the things that kept me up at night, trying to figure out. Yeah.
And you're about as handy as I am, I think. I think anytime I try to do something around the house that's, handy and carpentry wise or electrical wise or anything like that, it winds up looking like, the Douglas household on Green Acres. It looks like the Monroe brothers have come in and done a job. So whenever we can, we have the professionals come in. Well, especially for plumbing and electricity.
Sure.
You really need the pros in for that.
I thought I had some skill with being in the pool industry. I'm like, I've done plumbing, but it's not the same. It's similar. It's not the same.
Let's take a quick break from talking to Matt for news from our friends and sponsors, Ricky and Kelly from Groenfell Meadery in Vermont. Ricky says they still have the Groenfell Winter Warmer in stock for a few more weeks. This delicious winter seasonal is a nod to ancient tradition based on historic wassail. A collaboration with Runamuck Maple, the Groenfell Winter Warmer features sweet honey and maple syrup, bright blood orange with warm cinnamon, vanilla, nutmeg, and cloves. The Winter Warmer comes in 750 milliliter ceramic swing top bottles that would be awesome to ring in the new year with, in my opinion, along with the holidays. And a portion of the sales goes to charity. If you live in the delivery area that is growing across the country, you can have the Groenfell Winter Warmer shipped directly to you, along with all the other delicious Groenfell and Havoc honey beverages. You can check all those out at family-owned and operated Groenfell.com. That's GROENNFELL. So let's talk about plumbing. I mean, you had a surprise when you started to talk to your plumber.
Yeah. It was, the sink. So there was two other brewers that I'd followed online who both had sinks in their brewery, and I'm like, all right, well, think I definitely want that. I mean, cleaning is mostly what a brewer does, right? So I feel like that's all I do, and I like doing it. And
Yeah,
so
I say if you like washing dishes, you'll love home brewing.
yeah. And I was, it's so funny when you watch these videos of other brewers, or you can kind of read between the lines a lot of times, and you can read. I read regrets, like you'd hear them complain a little bit in their videos. Like I remember I was watching this video where the guy installed a sink, and he had this little regret that he didn't have a sideboard, like a drain on his sink. And I go, okay, so the sink that I get has to have a drain board, because I was originally going to buy just a big basin, like a big, utility sink you would have for a laundry room. But then I was like, okay, I heard that guy kind of in his voice complain about not having a drain board. So I went and found that on Amazon, and then I was just kind of that was before we actually settled into the house. I couldn't have somebody come out there and look at it and say like, well, you're not going to be able to put the sink here because we're not going to be able to run this. And I was super nervous. And the one thing that I knew was tough was the walls were only 2x4s. So it meant that, and all the walls are outside walls. And that meant that I couldn't, even though in my head I wanted it, and I was like, oh, maybe somebody will do it. But they can't run the plumbing, the hot and cold lines and the drain line inside the wall. There's not enough room. There's not enough insulation to protect it from freezing. Even though, every plumber I had come out to give me estimates, they all just, they were all going to use PEX. I think only one plumber said he was going to use copper. And I know that PEX, from doing research on YouTube and stuff, it does expand. Mm-hmm. And so,
but you can't brew if your pipes are frozen, no matter what.
And the last thing I want is a flood, So we ended up. So the plumber came over, and I had this idea in my head that we were going to do, put the pipes in the wall, and he just said no. He actually said to me, "I'll do it if you sign a waiver." And I go, well, and this is why the professionals, it's like, yeah, I want it done correctly. If I was going to do something, I could, fumble my way through it and probably screw something up. That's what I'm good at. But having a professional come out and tell me that I couldn't do that, I'm like, okay, well, then let's do it correctly. Let's do it right. And so what ended up happening was they ended up running the pipes on the outside of the wall so you see it. And in my head and in all the designs, that's not how it was, done. And so I had to sort of, and I'm a designer by trade, so it was a little disappointing, but I'm like, okay, well, now I'm going to embrace this, this style of industrialness where you're going to see the pipes and you're going to see the chains that hang the hood. You're going to see the fan. You're going to see everything. I can't hide it. I could have built a soffit, and then I was like, well, that's going to be extra money to come out just to make something look nice. To me, that wasn't worth it. But and then because it was, the floor was already concrete, what I wanted was the drain pipe to go into the floor and just drain out, into the backyard or something simple. But they actually had to put in what's called a drainosaur, which is a sump pump, like a kind of a self-contained, sump pump and well. And so the water, so every once in a while you'll be doing, work in the brewery with the sink, and you'll run the water. It goes into this little bucket that sits underneath the drain board. Thankfully, I got that. And then it just kicks on and pumps it up the wall, over, and then through the other garage, and then into our drainage system. So it's
so
very
your drain
loud.
Goes up.
Yeah,
your drain goes up like a fun house at Branson.
Yeah, yep.
That's Silver Dollar City.
It goes up, and then there's like a slight, I think it's an 1/8-inch grade that kind of like carries it the rest of the way into the actual drain of the house, the main drain of the house.
So I take it you have to be sure there are no solids in your drain water there.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out a way to get around that. So yeah, I don't put hops in the sink. I don't put grain in the sink. So what I do is I put a bucket in the sink and I wash everything in the bucket, and then I have to go outside and dump the bucket. So it's, it's fine. I'll figure out something.
Yeah, I think for all the positives, I think walking outside just to drain a bucket every now and then is not a big deal.
No, not a big. And I put the door in, so now it's very easy for me.
So you've got finished walls, you've got the drywall, and we can see the plumbing, but it's not a big deal. It's it doesn't and this is a man space. It's being a little industrial is okay.
And what's funny about the drywall too is this is me not knowing things, and I didn't do any research prior to the drywall people coming out because I just figured it's drywall. I mean, but there's different types of finishes, which I'm going to sound stupid, but I didn't know what they were. And so the guy kept telling me, we're doing a level 2 finish. I was like, yeah, level 2. That sounds official and right, and correct. But it turns out so then I got to paint it. And then it turns out, well, you can see all the screw holes. You can see all the tape. You can see everything. And then I had to, I called him back and I'm like, well, you said it was going to be paint ready. He goes, yeah, before a garage. Oh, yeah, right. This is a garage. That's correct. So it was a miscommunication there, but again, just embracing the mistakes because it's the first time I had done any sort of home remodel, if you will, ever. I do have my dad to lean on, but he's not here. He's not physically here. He's in Jersey and I'm in Colorado, so everything's through FaceTime. And he doesn't build kitchens; he just designs them. So it's sort of like. I was relying on the internet to carry me through. And that's, again, I figured, you know what? I won't be as concerned about putting holes in walls, hanging shelves or making mistakes because, I could just cover it up. It'll not a huge deal.
And you've got workspace, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was an afterthought, yeah.
Stainless steel tables?
I had those at my old place because I had a small 4-foot stainless steel table, Amazon, and I only had a mash tun, and that was it. I think that was the only thing I kept on the table because obviously the boil kettle was on the burner, which was not on the table. So I had a small table, and then when I decided to upgrade to electric, I needed a larger table to put everything on because I didn't have a burner anymore, and so I ended up investing in a 6-foot table. And so I had these 2 tables. And so I had this extra 4-foot table as a prep station. And then I realized, well, where am I going to store all the airlocks and hoses and clamps and just little tiny things that we just have, siphons. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't want that out and open. So I ended up getting a workbench with drawers and stuff in it. And put everything in there, and that was it. So now I have 2. I have the 4-foot table that I'm using for, really like bottling and hop storage and just little like more utility, and then the other one's for, with all the drawers. It's for I have a yeast starter or yeast stir plate on there, and I have a little electric induction burner for heating up. DME and water, and I have a little electrical, or what do you call it, like a Bluetooth speaker for music, because you got to have music. So, or a podcast in this case,
sure,
which I listen to a lot. So, that's I have 2 tables now to do all the prep work, which is nice.
Now you've kept so far you've kept the concrete floor.
Yeah, yes. I wanted to keep it just as is. I had thought about putting a floor drain in very early on, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds like a lot of extra work for, I don't think a huge deal. Just don't spill, right? It's just I gotta just try not to spill things." So I was just planning on leaving it alone, but I had some advice that said I should at least get it sealed. And then I got advice that I should get it painted because after the drywall guys came in and completely destroyed the floor, unfortunately. And then the paint, there's a lot of paint got on the floor too. So it was just better to just paint and seal at the same time. So we just used a concrete garage concrete paint for a floor.
Yeah, the one you mentioned floor drain. That was going to be one thing that I was going to, add to your wish list that you should have done.
Yeah,
but with all the problem with the drainosaur, what is it?
Drainosaur. Yeah,
you would have had to have another drainosaur kind of set up for your floor drain.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's on a grade because it's in it's a garage that's been naturally graded down towards the the driveway, but. Yeah, I would have needed something, or I mean, even worse, I would have had to dig up concrete, and I don't know, like rhubarb. That's not it.
Rebar.
Exactly. See how much I know?
Stay away from the rebar pie.
There's so much of rhubarb pie.
It's not as good.
Yeah, so there's a ton of rhubarb in my floors. So I didn't know if that was something I was going to run into a problem. As we started busting up the concrete. So. I just
but the good thing about leaving it, with just painted and polished or whatever, is that when your kegerator, when a tap does get left open on your kegerator, and 5 gallons of beer does spill out on the floor, or when the airlock gets stuck on one of your fermenters and it sprays beer all over the place, you can just hose it down and hose it out the garage door. You don't need it. You really don't need a floor drain.
Nope. And that was. It's exactly what I thought. I don't want to be on your homebrewing disaster show if I can help it. I have had them. I just probably too embarrassed to send it in.
Well, you should. The theme we haven't recorded this year's show yet, but the theme is going to be spills and sprays. There's a lot of spillage and spraying in this year's show.
Yeah.
It's and I don't know what your ceiling is made of, but it might be helpful to have a surface that you can spray off as well.
Yeah, I don't. But I have had issues with the sink leaking a lot. The drainosaur leak has leaked a couple times. The pipes have leaked. And since it's all kind of new, every morning I just wake up and I go out there and I just look just to make sure I don't have a flood or anything. And I feel like over time that anxiety will sort of dissipate. But for now, it's just like, because it's happened already a few times where I've had to tighten some clamps or reconnect some stuff. But so far in the last couple weeks, it's been okay.
So the big question is, after all this work and expense, does it work?
It does.
Does the brewery space work?
Yes, I've done 2 batches. I've done a Kolsch and I've done an IPA, and they're both the Kolsch is almost done fermenting. I mean, it's done fermenting. I'm just cold crashing it currently. The IPA I did over the weekend on Sunday, and so. Yeah, it works. It's
wow.
There's definitely some. I figured this would happen. This always happens. Where I write down my process and I time everything because I want to. Again, like just every measurable variable I can get my hands on. Like I want to know, and so I measure how long it takes to do every single task because I try to find shortcuts or ways to optimize my brewing process. So there's a few things that need tweaking and correcting, but for the most part, yeah. I mean, there's like little things I have to go out and get. Like I had to go out and get. I was having issues with standing water in the kettles because I was trying to figure out a way to not have to disconnect the kettles and drain them in the sink or whatever. And I wanted to do everything kind of like as they sat there. I haven't been able to do that because I haven't been able to figure out how to get the standing water out of them. But I did read somewhere that somebody uses like a mini shop vac. So I might go invest in something like that. Just something to suck the water out or blow the water out through the hoses or whatever. So, or a towel works. I have that. So
low tech.
Yeah, low tech. Very analog. But yeah, other than that, yes, it works. It's great. I could spend all day in there. It's nice. Trying to kind of, this is sort of the other thought of it too was I've always wanted something like this, but even now where we can't have many people over, it's in a lot of, breweries can't have a lot of capacity or, especially now that we're heading into the wintertime, this could be at least a place for, the people that I trust in my life to come over and sort of enjoy and still feel like they're going out to a brewery when it's just my house.
Right. If there are people out there who want to do their own he shed or she shed or
shed quarters,
how what's of your learnings? Because you learn well with experience.
Yeah.
Of your learnings, what would you pass on as things to watch out for? Roadblocks or hiccups, or what would you say?
Plumbing, electricity was easy. I think that was, and the thing with electricity is, if you put the outlet in the wrong spot, you can just put like a bar, just plug in something that extends an extension cord works. The electric was the easiest thing. The plumbing was it kept me up at night the most, and ventilation. Understanding CFM, I didn't know that term until I started doing this, and different speed. I almost bought 1,000 CFM fan, and I didn't know because I was just Googling things, and my dad was like, "That's crazy! You're gonna have to have makeup air." I'm like, "What's makeup air?" So it's like, yeah, there's like these you just kind of run into these things, but yeah, definitely ventilation and definitely plumbing were the two things that know before you go, and do like I did so much research on those two pieces, and I had to bring in professionals to tell me what my options were, because you can go on the internet and you can find out, okay, well, there's this option, there's that option, great, but then depending on your situation and depending on the county codes and depending on our altitude, that didn't really play too much into it, but yeah, it all makes a difference. And so having somebody come out and at least give you your options, and then weighing those options against what you research, and then knowing and just being confident that yes, this is what I want because it's pretty much permanent. But then also you got to remember too, it's like it feels permanent because you're putting nails into walls and you're installing electricity, but nothing really is. And knowing that can kind of de-stress you a bit, I think. And I try to teach myself that. I try to practice that. Patience also is another thing. I was definitely not very patient, and I am again somebody who likes to optimize every little thing I look at. And so even the entire building process, I did it in 40 days. I was trying to do it in 30, and by doing none of the work myself, so it was a lot of scheduling and having people to trust. I do regret the speed at which I did it. I wish I would have taken my time and really understood each and every single piece, especially drywall, especially plumbing, and kind of weighed my options longer and took my time. I was anxious. I wanted it done. So
it gives you a good appreciation for what a talented general contractor does.
Oh my God, yes. It got to a point a few times where I thought about stopping and just getting somebody who had that previous knowledge that I didn't have, just to save myself the stress. But my dad kept pushing me, so he's like, yeah, you can do it. It's fine. Just keep going. I'm like, all right. So thanks, Dad, for being a cheerleader.
Well, they say building a house is kind of like childbirth. It's difficult to go through, but after it's finished, you tend to maybe the memories of the hard parts fade a bit.
Unless you have them all on camera.
And you do.
Yeah, and then you have to edit a video for 2 weeks. Yeah.
Oh well, I'm jealous because I don't have a dedicated space, but and don't really have leanings toward getting one. So
Sure.
I'm jealous, and it really did turn out looking good. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was been on my to-do list for a very, very long time, and now I just got to use it.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
You don't have any excuses now, not
Nope,
to brew.
Nope, not at all.
Well, Matt, this has been fun. We will go to brewcabin.com. and check out everything else that you've been doing, too. I appreciate you taking time.
James, this is an honor. Thank you so much. I've been listening to you for 10-plus years. I was trying to do the math this morning. I've never looked more forward to being on a podcast in my entire life because, honestly, you're somebody that I've listened to longer than anybody out there.
Wow.
And I don't listen to many podcasts. It's you, Comedy Bang Bang, and that's it.
Just me and Scott Aukerman.
Just you and Scott Aukerman, and I'm not going to be on Comedy Bang Bang anytime soon. So it's honestly a privilege, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, thanks again to Matt. You can see his new space on his blog, brewcabin.com. And you can see Matt performing a country song about his experience in the video that he made about it on YouTube. Not his voice. It's funny. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. And that's all until next time. Till then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer, production help for Basic Brewing Radio, and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.